Welcome to the Altruistic Libertarian, advocate for a genuinely free society. I am Anthony Wheeler, and today we begin our series on pervasive intervention. The principal barrier in the modern age to establishing a genuinely free society is the pervasive intervention of the government. As Hayek observed in 1935, quote, "It is important to realize in any investigation of the possibilities of planning that it is a fallacy to suppose capitalism as it exists today is the alternative. We are certainly as far from capitalism in its pure form as we are from the system of central planning. The world of today is just interventionist chaos." Unquote. Since that time, the scale of government intervention has been ratcheted forward by a full magnitude, with occasional and beneficial retractions, deregulation of the airlines, for instance, and the break of the telecommunications monopoly. While most of the discussion of government intervention revolves around economics and commerce, it must be kept in mind that genuine freedom includes all aspects of human life, including the spiritual, civil, and personal. As such, in most cases, we can replace terms like capitalism and free market with genuine freedom, thereby expanding the concept to include everything humans care about. Most people don't question the magnitude of government intervention. It seems normal, expected, required even. Every nation on earth is governed in similar ways, differing only in the degree of intervention. Kant provides a philosophical legitimization of government intervention, a duty on the one hand to cheerlessly help others, perfect for a soulless bureaucracy, and secondly, the compulsion to strict adherence to all laws, regardless how unjust or harmful. Quote, "It is a duty to the people to bear any abuse of the supreme power, even then though it should be considered to be unbearable. And the reason is that any resistance of the highest legislative authority can never but be contrary to the law, and must even be regarded as tending to destroy the whole legal constitution." Unquote. Some have expressed the need to have the state govern society in order to maximize happiness. Quote, "But Dostoevsky's brief tale about the Grand Inquisitor in the Brothers Karamazov makes wonderfully clear in about 20 pages what so many readers of Plato's Republic and Laws have overlooked. It is possible to argue, and Plato, like the Grand Inquisitor, did argue, that freedom leads men to be vicious and unhappy, while the best and safest, if not the only, road to happiness and virtue is to take away men's freedom." Unquote. Then there are those who long for earlier, simpler times without a genuine understanding of what that earlier, more primitive life entails. Some people consider their current life acceptable and don't chafe against the restrictions they face, the taxes they pay, or consider the possibilities that don't exist because they don't exist. They may even consider themselves free. Quote, "Freedom of will really means nothing more than feeling no new chains." Unquote. Descending into the more prosaic, Ludwig von Mises strikes at the core. Quote, "At the bottom of the interventionist argument, there is always the idea that government or the state is an entity outside and above the social process of production, that it owns something which is not derived from taxing its subjects, and that it can spend this mythical something for definite purposes. This is the Santa Claus fable raised by Lord Keynes to the dignity of economic doctrine and enthusiastically endorsed by all those who expect personal advantage from government spending." Unquote. People seem to think you can get something from the government for nothing, forgetting that the only advantage the government has over private institutions is the monopoly on the legal use of violent force. Yet there is no magical wealth-creating government wand. Quote, "The government has no more ability than individuals to create something out of nothing. When the government spends more, the public spends less. Public works are not accomplished by the miraculous power of a magic wand. They are paid for by funds taken away from the citizens." Unquote. The use of force can only prevent or destroy. It can never create. In other words, it's impossible to legislate wealth. Yet the electorate constantly behaves as if this isn't so. Quote, On the unhampered market, there prevails an irresistible tendency to employ every factor of production for the best possible satisfaction of the most urgent needs of the consumers. If the government interferes with the process, it can only impair satisfaction, it can never improve it." Unquote. New wealth gets created when something of value is brought into existence, a product or service or anything that humans value, for a cost less than the value of what is created. For example, when a farmer freely trades 3 chickens for a pair of shoes, both he and his trading partner are better off, creating new wealth in the world. When a company produces products in a free market and generally operates profitably, revenues exceed costs, both expense and capital, new wealth is created. Alternatively, when a company or a government entity expends more resources than the value created, wealth is destroyed. Within regimes with concentrations of absolute power, the goal of intervention is often very simple: aggrandizing their personal wealth. For nominal democracies, the process is more refined. Quote, "It is precisely the fact that the market does not respect vested interests that makes the people concerned ask for government interference." Unquote. Government interference takes the form of favorable regulations and spending bills that favor one industry, state, over another, and outright grants. Tax dollars are distributed to voting constituencies with varying justification. Special interests use the power of the state to improve their circumstances at the expense of many others. This is very common. The naive and or ignorant believe government intervention properly serves social needs by effectively redistributing wealth from one set of taxpayers to another, thereby improving overall satisfaction. They believe that the only way these services can be effectively provided or our society properly protected, for instance, food, housing, medical care for the poor, education for children, retirement benefits for the aging, postal service, transportation, highways, unemployment benefits, moral standards upheld, drug use, prostitution, gambling, protection from monopolies, antitrust, challenges to traditional marriage, gay, transgender, is through the application of government intervention. Another class of sincere thinkers justify benevolent intervention in the spirit of creating the good life. Frederick Copleston, a Jesuit priest and a historian of philosophy, provides an excellent example of this pervasive and widespread point of view. Quote, "The Greek view of the state, which is also that of St. Thomas, is superior to the view which may be known as the liberal idea of the state." Liberal as in the classic liberal sense, as in, i.e., libertarian. "The view of the state as an institution, the function of which is to preserve private property and, in general, to exhibit a negative attitude towards members of the state." In practice, of course, even the upholders of this view of the state have had to abandon a completely laissez-faire policy, but their theory remains barren, empty, and negative in comparison with that of the Greeks. Unquote. A genuinely free society does not preclude the development of organic and healthy communities, ones that offer the opportunity to live the good life. In fact, many kinds of communities can exist within a free society, some healthier than others. Any visionary can propose, support, or establish a community that meets their definition of the good life, and free individuals can choose to join. Alternatively, a state-dominated society cannot guarantee that a society that provides the good life will exist, outside of a limited version enforced upon an unwilling citizenry. This must be so, otherwise the power of the state would be unnecessary to create and maintain it in the first place. Some paradox of our nature leads us, when once we have made our fellow men the objects of our enlightened interest, to go on to make them the objects of our pity, then of our wisdom, ultimately about our coercion." Unquote. On the other hand, the cynic knows better and understands that government intervention is costly and ineffective, yet continues to support such policies due to the ensuing power and influence it conveys. As it stands, the government has powerful regulatory and financial levers in every aspect of human life: finance, education, industry, labor, retirement, healthcare, environment, recreation, law enforcement, and national defense. Maintaining that influence, regardless of the cost, remains a priority for many. Finally, some groups simply want to force others to do what they want, based on some sense of moral superiority or perceived personal benefit. Thus, all political action consists of one group of people forcing another group of people to do, or not do, what they would ordinarily want to do, or not do. Or as Valerie put it, politics is the art of preventing people from minding their own business. What goes unstated by the electorate and government officials is their view of the mass. To put it plainly, they vote and legislate as if most people are stupid, as if they are unable to live an appropriate life without the coercive guidance of the government. The mass must be treated like children, without respect or dignity, as they seem unable or unwilling to behave appropriately. Quote, "But once the principle is admitted that it is the duty of government to protect the individual against his own foolishness, no serious objections can be advanced against further encroachment." Unquote. It is true that many of us make bad decisions and occasionally bring harm to ourselves or fail to select the optimal path. That is the nature of the human condition. Using the power of government to limit some actions and insist upon others will never change this, other than to make some people utterly dependent upon the state and restrict the potential of others. Peter Drucker establishes the historic threshold when pervasive social intrusion became the norm. Quote, "By 1960, it had become accepted doctrine in all developed Western countries that government is the appropriate agent for all social problems and all social tasks." Unquote. This is a principal doctrine that stands in the way of realizing a genuinely free society, a barrier that must be breached if humanity is to thrive. In summary, cynics support big government because it provides positions of power and influence and the opportunity to exploit others. Those in positions of power and influence do what is necessary to get the naive and or ignorant to believe that the government benefits society so that they in turn will support big government. While the naive and or ignorant sincerely believe big government benefits society, they are mistaken, as there is always a net cost to government activity, in that it always costs more than the value it creates. While someone always benefits from government activity, the bureaucrats if no one else, the cost is always greater in that on balance more people are hurt than are helped. In some instances this cost is warranted, in particular when the use or the threat of use of violent force is necessary to protect citizens from criminals or foreign aggressors. The government is also necessary to maintain the legal infrastructure, including the courts and basic regulations dealing with externalities, and a stable money supply. For most other societal activities, including general commerce, medicine and medical services, insurance, communication, retirement, space exploration, research, investment, education, transportation, technology, standards, the arts, social relationships, marriage, and social welfare, private institutions are far better suited to satisfy individual and by extension societal needs than government bureaucracies. Perhaps more importantly, private institutions that fail to effectively provide desired products and services cost effectively fail. That is, they eventually cease to exist as independent organizations, as opposed to government institutions that, no matter how inefficient or effective, go on forever. Well, that concludes our show for today. In the next episode, we continue our series on pervasive intervention. Until then, peace.